Welcome to episode 111 of the Lone Hockey Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about some standouts between Dallas and Chicago from last night's game. Dallas ended up winning the game and they played really well all throughout the game. They managed to maintain a lead for a majority of it, and they were a team that has showcased their skill and their speed all season long thus far. They've been one of the top teams in the NHL, and they've showcased that on a consistent basis so far. And through 9 games, they won 7 games. So they've been really good. They won the game 4-2, and we'll talk about some standouts from the matchup. So we'll start with Chicago. I wanted to actually start with Pat Maroon of all players. I would have never expected to say that, but Pat Maroon is actually really good yesterday. One of his best games of the season thus far, and a guy who showed really good playmaking skill and a really nice playmaking touch. And he had a really nice stretch pass. And it was an outlet pass from the D zone all the way to the neutral zone where he sprung Connor Bedard on a breakaway shot. And Bedard, all he had to do was rip the puck and shoot it top shelf, and he was able to score. Really nice shot and really nice release from Bedard off the rush there. And Maroon, with his skill and his playmaking ability, really showcased that there as well. And again, he's not the most skilled player that you notice on the Hawks right away, but at the same time, he's a guy that's going to bring some grit, he's going to bring some tenacity, and he's going to bring some willpower to this team. And it's a team that needs some veteran presence and needs some veteran leadership to sort of align that with the rest of the younger guys on the team. And he's been a really good fit thus far physically and being able to be tenacious on pucks and be able to be a presence on that fourth line with guys like Ryan Donato, Craig Smith, and even Lucas Reichel on the fourth line, those guys in the mix. And so Pat Maroon looked really good yesterday, and he was really good all across the board as well. Nolan Allen, I wanted to talk about him again because he was standing out. And I noticed him defensively, and they maneuvered around some of the pairings because they had Allen paired with Murphy yesterday instead of Allen and Brody. That was what it was in that game previously on Friday night against Nashville. That pairing was not good Friday night, so they needed to make a change, and they ended up pairing Allen with Murphy. Murphy took a little bit more penalties, and he was a little iffy in terms of his puck handling and trying to make small area decisions with the puck. But at the same time, Allen, he looked really calm with the puck on his stick, and he counteracted some of the negatives that were in Murphy's game yesterday. And Murphy didn't play badly. It was just he had some mistakes, and there's going to be mistakes that happen in players' games from time to time. But some of them were a little bit more costly than others. So Allen was a good counteracting presence where he could manage the breakout. He can manage outlet situations. He can manage D zone retrieval situations. And he was very steady presence. He's been every time he's been in the lineup. Connor Bedard, we have to talk about him again. I love talking about him. He's very fun to talk about him. And he's a guy yesterday that showcased his shot. I really noticed that pull and drag release within his shot. And that was noticeable on his goal, like I mentioned before, with the pass, the stretch pass from Maroon over to him and how he's able to maneuver on the shot and be able to change the angle and release the puck top shelf. Connor Bedard is an elite presence. He's elite all across the board offensively. You notice him everywhere in the zone offensively, and he's a threat to shoot from anywhere inside the zone. And Ryan Donato, another guy that stood out yesterday. I feel like Donato over the stretch of these last few games has been really noticeable. And especially being a bottom six player, he's been a presence inside that bottom six for sure, where he can bring speed, he can bring some skill. His skill is slightly above average. It's not necessarily anything that's too creative or too fancy or anything. He's more of a straight line type player where he likes to get pucks in deep. He likes to get in on the forecheck, and it's the prototypical cliche they hear, but it's essentially his game, and it's somewhat effective. Sometimes it's not the most effective because he has to dump a puck in all the time and then go chase after it, whereas he could try to maintain possession a little bit more and try to enter the offensive zone with control that way. But he was good and he's noticeable. He scored a goal last night as well. And Teuvo Teravainen, I thought was noticeable in this game as well. Another guy who I really liked as a volume shooter and how he could shoot off the catch. And there were some times where he received some railroad passes. This was on the power play and also at even strength, where he'd receive those passes and then he'd immediately shoot right away. It wouldn't take him too long to shoot. He would shoot right away. So that allowed him to be effective in terms of being able to generate volume in his shots and how he's contributing as a shot generator in that sense. And he's more of a playmaker. That's what his game is mostly built off of, especially since he's a guy that can make small area plays and generate small area passes. So Teravainen was very noticeable on the shot side of the puck and being able to shoot effectively as well. And then we'll go over to some Dallas standouts. Matt Duchene had 2 of 4 goals for Dallas in this game. What I noticed with Duchene, and I've noticed this for quite a long time, every system he's been in, whether it's when he started his career in Colorado or when it was Ottawa or Nashville or Dallas, and I've always noticed him in his forechecking ability, and that's one of the biggest standout abilities I've noticed when it comes to him is how he hunts and how he uses his speed to get in and get deep on the forecheck, and to be able to create forecheck retrievals with effectiveness and with consistency. And I noticed him creating a lot of retrievals yesterday on the forecheck and being able to be a guy who can use his skill in tandem with that. That's a big asset he can use because when he's deep in the zone, he can find ways to outmaneuver defenseman if he's in a small area situation where he's trying to escape the play and escape off the wall. Noah Heiskanen, another guy that stood out. I love watching his ability to transition the puck. That's the most noticeable thing when it comes to him. And obviously, they have Peter DeBoer as their head coach, who in Vegas he had Shea Theodore, a very similar type of player in a sense where he can control play in transition, he can control play on the blue line offensively, can walk the line really effectively. There's a little bit more range of stride depth to Haskinen's feet compared to Theodore's, but very similar type of players. And obviously, DeBoer has managed similar type of players in many different systems he's been involved with. Even before that with San Jose, Brent Burns in a way, and how he was able to be an offensive defenseman there. But going back to Hastings, a guy who stands out as a two-way D as well. I noticed him defending line rush. I noticed him defending entries. He's really good at being able to shut plays down with his feet and how he can angle guys off and close guys off that way. And just a guy that's an all-around defenseman. He's a steady presence, and he's become, I would imagine, a guy who can hit at least 80, 90 points sometime in the next handful of years offensively because he looks like a guy that can very well be not only a point per game contributor in terms of point production in the NHL, but beyond that as well. And speaking of defensemen, we'll go to Thomas Harley. Very similar in terms of how he's improved defensively over the course of the time in the NHL. That was a real big flaw of his when he was playing junior with the Mississauga Steelheads, but ever since he was drafted and ever since being in Texas and playing in the NHL now consistently, he's been a guy that's really worked on his two-way game and his two-way presence. And I noticed him defending and boxing out in small area situations in D zone and his ability to defend line rush. Those are 2 key areas that have improved and have allowed him to be able to be more in control of his defensive play and even his size. So he has advantage with his size at 6'4", and he has an advantage with his stick reach and how he can use that reach to be able to shut plays down. And he has an advantage there, but he needs to be aware sometimes of how he's controlling the line laterally and how he's defending the blue line moving laterally. But at the same time, his box outs have improved in the NHL, and he's become more of a guy that can be relied upon in D zone as well. And Tyler Seguin was another guy that stood out. I noticed him a lot as actually as a shooter, and playmaking is more built and more relied upon when it comes to his game. But a guy who can really shoot the puck effectively. He scored 40 goals before and seasons prior, so he's a guy that can score in a lot of different ways. He can score from interior space. I noticed him generating a lot of shots from interior space, and he had a shot I remember yesterday where all of his weight was leaned forward on his skates because it looked like he was about to fall down. And he just loaded his front leg in terms of the weight transfer, and then he was able to release it, hit off the crossbar. It was a powerful weight transfer, but really nice release. So an example and a testament to how he's able to shoot the puck. He can shoot with velocity, he can shoot with accuracy, he can shoot with essentially pinpoint accuracy. He can find areas in the net that other players can't, and he's really smart with his timing on his shots and his reads. Logan Stankoven's been dominant to start the season. I wanted to talk about him as well. I really liked his game. He's been a top 6 guy who can play on that top line, and he's played a lot on that top line for Dallas. And I believe it was with Robertson and Hintz yesterday. But he's a guy that's very noticeable in his checking game. He's tenacious. He's like a little ball energy. He just never stops working, never stops competing. Remember, there was a situation where he's going against 6'6" Alec Vlasic, and he's still trying to get inside positioning on him, still trying to strip him free of the puck. He's not afraid of anybody. He's tenacious on the forecheck, tenacious in his checking ability, and tenacious in how he's able to generate shots and generate volume and be able to be a guy who's always around the puck as well. I always notice that when it comes to him. And him and Connor Bedard were obviously line mates in junior tournaments and international play. And they weren't line mates when they were playing in the WHL, but they were line mates playing, say, World Juniors, U18, that type of stuff. They actually played together in Frisco in 2021 at the U18s at the time as well, and dominant together. But with Stankoven, he's a guy that can complement pretty any player. Let me rephrase that. Pretty much any player because he's a guy that stands out as a checker, but he also stands out in terms of positional play and how he can stay between his checks. And I've noticed that, and I noticed that a lot yesterday in terms of how he can maintain that ability to stay between his checks. It really allowed him to be able to control play and be able to control space in that manner as well. And one more is Colin Blackwell. I thought he looked really good against his former team yesterday. And I noticed him very similar to Stan Cohen. I noticed him a lot as a checker and how he can create retrievals on the forecheck, his tenacity, how involved he is in corner battles and half wall battles. And he really competes all the time without the puck. He's always looking to get pucks back as well.